My name is Breanna Sheehan. I'm a senior at Brattleboro Union High School, and the first veteran that I will be honoring is Paul Richard Dartt. Paul Richard Dartt was born on a Wednesday, March 20th, 1946, in Brattleboro, Vermont. He was the fourth of 6 children born to Donald and Doris Dartt. His siblings included his brother Roger, his 4 sisters Donna Cole, Ruth Blunt, Kathleen Macy, and Janet Curran. Paul was active from a very early age, always taking risks and playing pranks. Paul was always up for running a race or climbing a tree, even when his mother constantly told him not to. Her warnings finally became reality when one day he fell out of a tree and broke his arm. In another instance, his sister Ruth recalled when Paul was around 6 years old and walking to school. His ball fell into the street so naturally, he ran straight into the road to retrieve it and was struck by a car. Fortunately, he walked away with only a bump on his head. As for his trickster side, his siblings recall a hot summer day in Brattleboro. As they walked to Memorial Park to swim, Paul had the great idea to have his sister Janet pretend to faint in the road so that someone would stop and give them a ride. Their plan did work, and a kind, prominent member of the community, Frank Dearborn, did give them a ride, but unfortunately, he saw right through Paul's story and warned them again not to do it or he would tell their parents. Paul was sensitive, funny, and fiercely protective of his sisters. If anyone picked on them, he was right there to defend them. His sister Ruth remembers that even though Paul was 1.5 years younger than her, they used to pass themselves off as twins. She used to call him Pee-wee as a kid, which is ironic because he eventually grew up to be 6'4" and 144 pounds. And his daringness did not leave him as he grew older. One time, he dared his sister to eat pebbles, saying they were good for you. She declined, but watched in awe as he downed a handful of stones without blinking an eye. Another scary moment occurred with Ruth at an old abandoned house. After looking around, he saw what he thought was an old golf bag, and upon turning it over, found a wooden leg inside. They both ran out of the building as fast as their legs could carry them. But before leaving, Ruth spotted an old pewter vase and took it with her. 60 years later, it sits in her office, where it reminds her of her brother every day. Classmates of Paul from middle and high school remember him fondly, describing him as fun, sweet, and a special friend. His siblings were told of a cute story from his early teens. He thought a lot of a girl in his class and would walk her to the bus stop every day after school. But instead of leaving her when the bus came and walking home, he would take the bus with her. He would wait till she was dropped off safely, say goodbye, and walk home from there. I guess, without a license, a bus ride with someone special was the best way he could spend his time. As Paul grew into his late teens, he began to truly enjoy playing pool. If he wasn't at home or at school, he was at Joe's Pool Hall in Brattleboro. He reminded his sister of a young James Dean, with a rebellious, carefree attitude, cigarette behind his ear, doing whatever made him happy. Though it was fun, it was not exactly the most productive path of life. His brother Roger was in the service at the time and suggested that Paul might want to enlist, and sure enough, with the possibilities of new adventures and experiences to look forward to, he did at age of 17. When he first entered the service, he was stationed in New York working as a gravedigger. He was a popular guest at Ruth's husband's family home in Long Island, where he entertained his much younger brother-in-laws with interesting but most likely exaggerated stories from his job. His parents insisted on writing letters to Paul in order to share news from home with him as often as possible. His sister Janet still has several letters written by Paul which she has saved throughout the years. After being discharged from his first tour in Vietnam, he returned back to Brattleboro looking for work. During his time home, he was in a minor traffic accident for which he was fined $300. Because he didn't have the money or a job at the time, he felt the best thing for him to do would be to re-enlist, and soon after he did. He began his second tour in March of 1968, and 7 months later, his family was informed that he had been mortally wounded. While in Vietnam, Paul spotted an enemy 20 feet away from his position, and rather than run, he stood his ground and returned fire as the enemy fired upon him. His family was told that his quick reaction warned his platoon of the danger and prevented a number of casualties. Throughout the years, Vietnam veterans have been depicted in many films, and a major theme in these films is the difficulties associated with adjusting to civilian life again. Though Paul's family did not have much of an opportunity to watch him readjust to civilian life, they did catch a glance of what it may have been like in one occasion. As many older Brattleboro natives can attest, the local fire station would blast its horn to acknowledge a local fire. The sirens were incredibly loud in order to reach all of the neighborhoods in the area. Paul had only been home for a short while then. While they were eating dinner one night, the sirens went off. As it went off, Paul dove under the table shaking. This apparently was the same siren that would go off when he was on duty. It was the first time they had ever seen their brother afraid of anything, and it sticks with him to this day. It is with great pride that his family and I recognize what he did for our country. They are incredibly proud of the medals he earned, which include the Bronze Star, the Soldier's Medal, the Purple Heart, the Vietnam Service Medal, and the Combat Infantry Badge. His younger cousin Steve, who is very fond of Paul, honored him years later by naming his firstborn son after him. On behalf of Paul's family and I would like to say thank you for all who made this evening so special. The Dartt family is very proud of their brother, along with so many of the other young men and women that gave so much for them. Thank you all.